And I would much rather prepare for a world and future where AI could replace me and prove my value beyond the typical AR job than assuming that I'm safe because there's relations in analyst relations and I get blindsided. This shift in mindset forces you to look beyond the table stakes activities related to analyst relations and ask, what problems can I uniquely solve for my company?
You are listening to This is Product Marketing, brought to you by Product Marketing Hive, a product marketing community that gives back. I'm your host, Louise Liu, Product Marketing Hive, and this podcast is supported by Product Marketing Edge, a technology product marketing consulting firm. In this episode, Terezia Stancik, Senior Analyst Relations Manager at Shopware, shares her thoughts on the impact of agentic AI on analyst relations. Let's dive into it right now. Hi, Terezia, welcome back.
Hi, Louise. Thanks so much for having me again.
Some listeners may remember you from our earlier chat about analyst relations, but for new listeners, can you give us a little introduction?
Absolutely. So as you already mentioned, today we'll be talking about analyst relations because that has been my focus and topic close to my heart for the past 4 years, as I have worked as Analyst Relations Manager for software companies. And today I'm hoping to bring a little bit of a twist, talking about how I personally use AI in this job and how I see AI influencing this line of work, because I know that also a lot of product marketing managers are indeed part of their responsibility to work with analysts and complete analyst evaluations. That's what I'm hoping to bring to the listeners today.
That's great. Very exciting. So to start with, give us your definition of agentic AI.
So I think most of the use cases that we still see nowadays, regardless of what all of the vendors pushing AI and agentic AI will tell you, are still generative AI. But where I see the difference is that up until now, AI has been reactive. So, you type in a question or give it a task and it gives you an answer or completes the task. But while that's powerful, that's also more passive. But if we were to employ agentic AI or, these AI agents, they are really proactive. So they can break down complex tasks. They start executing them. They can change course if you give it feedback or if some conditions change. And also they can collaborate either with you or with other colleagues, but even other systems and other AIs. So instead of, looking at it as a tool that I use quite often, it starts to feel more like a colleague that I can work with, actually.
That's very interesting. Before we dive into this whole analyst relations side, let's step back and take a look at the B2B buyers. In the agentic AI world, what kind of B2B buyer behaviors do you expect to change?
I see it already changing every day, and not just in the market where my company operates, but I also see it in myself, right? Because, if I'm buying a software, I don't draft a doc full of requirements, or I don't Google the solutions anymore. I open ChatGPT or Perplexity. I actually taking it a step further. I quite often use a speech-to-text tool. So I literally just say in plain language, here's what I need. Here's what's absolutely a must-have for this tool. Here's what would be nice to have. Here's how I plan to use this tool. Here are the use cases. Here's what I don't care about. There are also some pricing requirements or some kind of feeling that I have for pricing. And within seconds, these tools give me a starting shortlist with vendors. But it's not just a plain list. They also list the pros and cons of each individual tool. What are the pricing considerations? What are some of the kind of niche differentiators that each vendor is quite strong in? So it's a clear, digestible overview. And then that becomes my starting point. Now, this is a situation when I'm buying something small and it might be enough, but if we're talking about B2B purchases worth of hundreds of thousands of dollars, that's quite different, because at that level, we already have a buying committee in place, or multiple people that need to be convinced. And if I'm making the final call, I need validation, I need proof, I need reassurance, because let's be honest, putting that much money on the line, if that tool fails, it's not only costing you money, it's also costing you your career and reputation as a decision maker. And nobody wants to be the person who makes the bad call. So this is where, the proof or validation in terms of analyst reports or analyst feedback comes in, and still will be important. However, I do believe that, as I explained how I start with a short list of vendors, I do see even these bigger purchases starting in the same way. And to also paint a picture with some specific data, looking at G2, for example, for those of you who don't know, G2 is one of the go-to sites for customer reviews for software. And I've seen buyers use it all the time to get customer proof to shortlist vendors. We many times got leads through G2. But I've seen that their engagement on the website is dropping. And my hypothesis is that it's not because of the fact that people are not interested in the reviews or insights within those reviews anymore. I think they still care about it. But the thing is, because of tools like ChatGPT or Perplexity that crawl the internet, the buyers don't need to go directly to G2's website anymore to access that content, because AI surfaces that content directly. And to me, that feels like a fundamental shift in how buyers find, evaluate, and decide on software, and also has implications on analyst research too.
Yeah, this is very interesting, because I think in the future, there'll be more and more AI agents doing the vendor research, maybe even requesting the RFPs, And then, in your opinion, from AR manager perspective, what are the signals like this into this new kind of B2B behavior changes that we should watch out for? Maybe something like agent-driven trials or bot-to-bot inquiries?
Yeah, so I think this really, if we're talking about the impact on how buyers find the information and how potentially they work with analysts, I think this is something that we as AR managers have to pay close attention to. However, I would say in the first step, it's the analyst firms and analysts themselves that should pay attention to this, because if they're the ones, their role is to guide the buyers through purchases and through procurement. If this behavior is changing, analysts have to pay attention to it, because in some cases there might be AI or agents that are guiding these buyers for free or at a very low cost. And now the thing is, today analysts still have an edge, data from vendors that isn't public, and that's still valuable. However, if buyers are happy getting their answers elsewhere, analysts can't assume that the people will always turn to them and pay the premium price that is related to their services for the kind of same input packaged in a way that is packaged right now. And analyst firms are already responding to the way of AI. There are some analyst firms that are already offering AI tools as well. And what it basically means is that they offer a chat interface where you can ask any questions in plain language and it will search across their reports. And on paper, this sounds perfect, because there were so many times that I, got a question from my stakeholder, or they asked me about this very specific data point that ideally should have been delivered yesterday because they need it for a presentation or a conversation. And I spent hours combing through reports to not find anything valuable. But the first iterations of these tools, I don't think they were good enough, and I couldn't really find what I needed because my expectations were very high. I'm a daily user of tools like ChatGPT, Perplexity, Gemini, and just compared to these tools, the analyst firm tools just don't measure up yet. So that's one side of the coin. But then also what I'm thinking through is the speed of insight insights and how they are delivered to the market. Because the main source of analyst insights remain evaluative reports that they write about vendors when we're talking about the buying process and how analysts get information on what are the right tools for certain use cases. And these evaluations refresh every 12 to 18 months. Meanwhile, we see that AI speeds up the feature release process and vendors are releasing features at a more rapid speed. However, within the evaluation, if I launch a feature 3 days after the cutoff date, it doesn't count towards the evaluation. I can still, brief the analyst and inform them about the feature or about, anything that we ship, and, they can use that information in future conversations. However, it's still outside of that evaluation. And that begs a question that how fresh are these reports and insights in them when they are published? And can AI help ensure that we are able to reflect developments more frequently and bring fresh insights into the market and to the clients that are being advised? And I even asked analysts about it. I asked them, do you even use any AI when you process this much information and all of the data that we send you in these evaluations? And most of the folks I asked, they actually said no, because they don't trust AI to pick up on the nuances and the differentiation that we as vendors try to communicate. While I do appreciate it on one hand, it also got me thinking, how longer can analysts or can we resist not using AI before we fall behind? So that's something that I'm keeping in mind. But I would say what would be the biggest disruptor to this whole model is if we ever got to a point where we don't work actually with a human analyst at all one day, but they would have their own agentic digital twin. So an AI agent that is a version of them that knows every report that they wrote, that remembers every client call and every briefing, and they can give insights instantly. And some people will say that no way, this will never happen because the human relationship is still so important and matters too much. But I wouldn't just simply rule it out, because I've already seen AI agents within customer support use cases, or I've seen that some companies actually deploy agentic SDRs that do all the prospecting, and at certain point there's a handover to a human salesperson, but the first few steps that used to be done by SDRs, human SDRs, are now done by AI. And there was also just one moment that kind of felt like a light bulb moment for me in this agentic era, because I saw a video where basically it was a situation where there was one agent acting on behalf of a CEO or just some human, and it was calling to a hotel to make a reservation. And on the other side of the phone call, there was an agent acting on behalf of that hotel. And when those two agents realized that they're not talking to a human being, but they're talking one agent to another, they actually switched from natural language, which of course sounded very robotic, but they switched from natural language to binary code actually. And that got me thinking, is that ever going to be my job? Because analyst relations is all about bidirectional sharing of information. So, would we ever get to a point where I have an agentic analyst and there's an agentic AI version of me, and these two are just sharing information with one another? So this is, of course, very distant future, I would say, but I wouldn't necessarily say it's never happening.
Yeah, this is a very interesting example you gave. Yeah, I would totally think it's possible in the future where every point of contact is becoming an AI agent talking to each other. Like the previous episode, you explained very detailed how analyst relations works. Traditionally, they have been about working with analysts, facilitating some briefings, inquiries, and also building relationship with them. So with this agentic AI coming in, What does it mean for analyst relation managers in terms of roles and responsibilities? Where can they contribute more strategic value in this new world?
That's such a great question, because we as AR managers, ever since I started in AR, I always keep hearing and we always talk about this question of, we need to be more strategic and prove our strategic value to the business, going beyond managing analyst interactions and scheduling meetings and distributing insights and managing these major evaluations. And I think with AI leading the way right now, there has never been a better time or more opportunity to do exactly this, to be more strategic. There is no excuse that you can have as an AR manager or just working with AI, having that as part of your job description, for not being more strategic and for not having the time and bandwidth to be strategic. When I started in AR, I remember that, AI was already here, but it was more or less it was embedded in some third-party tools. So I started using those as an experiment. And then we got introduction of ChatGPT and Gemini, and it has become a tool that I use daily. And then I evolved it into creating custom agents that actually served my very niche purpose, which was analyst relations and all the tasks related to that. And that actually allows me now to delegate so many low-value, mundane tasks that I don't actually like doing. I don't like managing calendars or taking notes or summarizing research. So now what I do is I actually delegate all of this to these custom agents. I just open my laptop, I turn the agent on, I turn on my dictating tool, and I just in plain language say what I need the agent to accomplish. I give it the reports that I need to have processed or the notes or whatever other context that I have. And I just see it do the job. And as I mentioned, writing inquiry requests, writing briefing requests, summarizing research, pulling insights. I don't do any of that anymore. I just have a custom agent for every single one of these tasks. And then one very obvious task that eats up a lot of time of an AR manager or anyone working in analyst relations is the major evaluations. Because we would spend weeks and weeks drafting over 300 answers and running them through all these different feedback loops and implementing the feedback and rewriting them again and checking the grammar and tone of voice. Now with AI, it has never been easier to automate this process and actually achieve good results. I'm not saying it's perfect. I'm not saying it will suddenly replace all of the human experts that you work with. But I have seen firsthand what the benefits are. And just to give you an example, also this is exactly a tool that I build. It's AI-based software that handles the whole evaluation process for the RFP or the questionnaire, as we call it in analyst relations. So basically, you get a certain number of questions. They're the same across all of the vendors, and your task as the AR manager is to have them answered within a certain character limit, and you want to squeeze in all of the information, as much as possible, because if you don't mention something, it doesn't count within the evaluation process anymore. So you want to mention everything, all of the capabilities, all of the results. At the same time, you want to differentiate yourself from the other vendors while not, filling the answer with the marketing jargon and the fluff that doesn't add any value. And, if analyst is going to read this fluff, they're just going to roll their eyes reading it. And then you want to send everything to your stakeholders and C-level who are very busy people, but you need feedback from them. And you need all of these stakeholders from product and product marketing and sales engineers and other experts that need to take the time of their day to do this with you. And typically you do it multiple times a year because you have multiple evaluations. And then for every evaluation, you do it every 12 to 18 months because they repeat themselves, as we already mentioned. And again, if you blow it, you have to live with the result for the rest of the year, because basically there's nothing more you can change about the evaluation once it's out. And the truth is, people don't like to do this. All of the colleagues that I ever worked with, they were very nice people, very kind. I enjoyed working with them, but everyone told me that completing major evaluations is not their favorite task to do, and neither is mine. So that's why when all of these kind of Gen AI wave started and all of these vibe coding tools were introduced, I thought that, okay, there's a better way to do this, to not make it stressful for everyone, and it shouldn't require weeks and weeks of work just to put together some answers. And it should allow people to, whatever time they invest into an evaluation, to use it efficiently and to save some time for the job that they actually signed up for and that they enjoy. So that's why with some of my colleagues, we came up with this tool to actually draft the answers for you that are based on all of the context that you provide for the tool. So your past questionnaires, any public information, it's your freedom to pick and choose, what context it should take into account. But it's also things like analyst tone of voice and character limit and all of the insights from the conversations that you had with the analyst. And we built this whole experience around giving the AR manager the autonomy to complete the evaluation without burdening the stakeholders too much. This is the current state, but already with the advancements in AI, think it feels like table stakes. So actually for future iterations, what we would like to achieve is actually combine the time period before an evaluation kicks off and provide a user interface and experience that allows you to collect information, whether that's from company resources or from actual experts and from your conversations with analysts, and work with AI to pick the right insights to be considered for the answers in the future, keeping in mind all the important bits from past conversations and actually strengthening the answers for the next research cycle. And what it looks like in reality is that something that took weeks and weeks, and at least for me personally, 40 different stakeholders. With the very first iteration that we released, I got the work done in under 5 working days with myself and 3 other stakeholders, and we actually improved our results as well. And that's very valuable for my company, not only because of the better result and the time that I saved all of these people that would normally be part of it. And the last thing I want to say is I don't want to make this sound as if I just opened up a vibe coding tool as someone with no technical experience. I just came up and just managed to vibe code this whole tool by myself, and it now delivers these results, because that would be selling a lie. That wouldn't be true. I think if you want to build a tool that performs like this, and it's robust and it's got some level of sophistication, you need to work with people who have technical background, who understand coding, who understand, generative AI and LLMs and RAGs, which is exactly the people that I'm surrounded by now. However, it still allows you, even with a very lean team that's got certain expertise, but neither of us is a software developer, it still allowed us to build something like this and to actually disrupt the experience that is so typically related to completing major evaluation in things like spreadsheets and Excels and that kind of thing.
Yeah, this is very interesting because I think this is a good example of within the AI era, how the AR role can be redefined, that you have stepped into this kind of new entrepreneurship, right? And people are not bound by what they know anymore. So this is a very interesting future, in my opinion. So looking ahead, what does next gen AR role look like in 3 to 5 years? It's evolving really fast. I want to hear your thoughts on this.
Oh, it's something that, as you can maybe tell, I think about so much, and I think even with the introduction of the AI tool for managing major evaluations, I think what that is going to mean for some companies is that they're still going to retain some of their AR people, and maybe not a lot will change for them. But there are plenty of companies that right now, maybe those with smaller AR programs and smaller AR teams where they have one AR manager or 1 to 2 AR managers focusing solely on analyst relations being their full-time job. I'm that case actually, so I'm talking about myself here. And once they start deploying more AI and the AI will get better at these tasks, I think they will soon realize it doesn't make sense to actually pay a full-time AR manager anymore, however harsh that might sound. So I think what smart AR managers are going to do is what I mentioned in the previous answer. So start looking at and start expanding and writing their own hypothetical job description. And that's what I'm doing, because I will be stuck in the workforce for quite a long time to come. So I'll definitely need to prepare for what that future looks like. And it's, I think, what the future holds for us. It's not even a role that's labeled analyst relations anymore. Because as we just talked about, there are so many processes that can be now replaced by AI, can be done faster, more efficiently. And then the question is, if you're building all of your value on just being an analyst relations manager with the typical job description that we have right now, it may not be enough. And I'm not saying that companies will now suddenly start dissolving their teams and firing AR people, although we have seen how, AR people are impacted in workforce reductions, and it's very tough. But it's all about reimagining what you can bring to the table beyond analyst relations. What are some of the other parts of the company that you can uniquely influence and shape, and what those responsibilities look like? Because if you prove that you can bring value outside of analyst relations and, as I mentioned, solve problems, then you don't have to be worried about my job. And this might be a little controversial for many, because I hear this all the time when talking about the future of analyst relations and how AI is impacting analyst relations. And the typical answer always is that, AI is here to stay. We will use AI more and more. However, it will not replace the AR manager, because analyst relations already got the word relations or relationships within it. So it means that relationships still matter, and AI can't replace AR managers. Of course, relationships matter, but they matter now. And if that is your only safety net, then you're vulnerable. And I would much rather prepare for a world and a future where AI could replace me and prove my value beyond the typical AR job than assuming that I'm safe because there's relations in those relations and I get blindsided. And I think this shift in mindset forces you to look beyond the table stakes activities related to analyst relations and ask, what problems can I uniquely solve for my company? And pursuing that path, that's, I think, what makes you future-proof. And that's what I'm already doing. And I'm already being pulled into projects that have got very little to do with analyst relations, but are making me very visible with my C-level, are measurably contributing to the company's success, And this is what I plan on doing besides actually working as a typical AR manager still.
Do you have any final thoughts you would like to share?
I would like to say that no matter how harsh that sounds, I come with this kind of look at analyst relations and its future within AI, not because I want to scare people, but because I don't want other professionals to get lulled into a false sense of security. And I would much rather be wrong in saying that analyst relations might get replaced by AI and future-proof my career rather than counting on the fact that we are relationship people and relationships are here to stay. Because I actually read, it was from one executive of a commerce platform who said that if the only contribution in your job that you have is managing relationships, that's not enough. What's more valuable is technical expertise, and better yet, being able to combine some technical expertise with that relationship element, because his prediction was that we will need fewer and fewer of these people just managing relationships, and these roles will start merging, and people will have to, if they want to stay relevant and valuable, they will have to come up with more value that they bring to the table than just managing relationships. And that's what I would advise to other people, is to go out there, find out what they're good at besides just being an AR manager, and then to really use it for their benefit and really look beyond the typical AR job description and what it tells you to do, and go and find projects on your own that actually show your stakeholders that you're an extremely valuable asset and they should keep you at the table, regardless of if you're called an analyst relations manager or whatever role you have. And I think that's universal advice for anyone, not only analyst relations people.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for tuning in to This is Product Marketing, brought to you by Product Marketing Hive, a product marketing community that gives back. Check out our website, productmarketinghive.com, to join our community, meet fellow product marketers, and access free resources. If you enjoyed our podcast, please subscribe and give a 5-star rating on the platform of your choice. See you next time.